Good evening, Professor Summers. This is Jace, this is my project overview walkthrough. I hope you're having fun watching all these videos. So, as you know, my project is based on a hypothesis that rebounding is very important, and that the better rebounding team always wins. And I test this hypothesis using the most recent NCAA tournament to see how different the results would be if the better rebounding team won. So, to start my project, I first gathered information about all the teams that were involved in the NCAA tournament. I put that all into Excel, and then I wrote create table statements. I'm using this Excel data and created both a team table that had information about the team name, region seed, their pace, their rebounding percentages, the conference they're in, the season wins and losses, put that into a team table, as well as made a game table that had a unique value for each game, which round that game was in, and whether that game was an actual game that happened or whether it was within my hypothetical bracket. Probably one of the hardest parts about the project was at the very beginning, as I had to formulate, as I had to create a game team table that married these two tables and had the results of the games in both the hypothetical and the actual scenarios. So as you can see, this was a very long and complex query with several nested statements and dozens and dozens of unions that was very complex because I couldn't mix regions as well as seeds, even though it was simple that the better rebounding team won. Because I was using the current NCAA tournament format, I had to match up just right. And so, as you can see, this query for just one round is over 300 lines. And you multiply that by a couple different rounds, as well as put the actual hypothetical brackets, and you're looking at 2,000 to 3,000 lines of SQL. However, to bypass this very complex and time-consuming query process, I instead just inserted the output into a game team table that enabled me to find the results of both the hypothetical and actual brackets for each region and each round and each seed by querying the game team table. Essentially, this turned a 300 plus line query into a 4-line query, which was pretty cool. So once I populated both the game team and game team tables, I was then ready to write the PHP and start writing the website. So here is the home page of the website. As you can see, it just introduces the topic of how I believe that rebounding is a good indicator of who should win. I want to test this hypothesis through. The next page being the NCAA Men's Basketball Tournament. This page is where everything, all the heavy content is. These first two buttons down here, they simply just query the game team table and team table for the results of the hypothetical bracket, meaning the bracket where the rebounding team won, and also the actual bracket. So if we go to the hypothetical bracket, how things should have turned out. You push this first button, it shows the initial 64 teams that are in the tournament, their region seed, their conference, regular season record, as well as the rebounding score, which this rebounding score is a function of their own rebounding percentage and their pace, meaning how fast they played, as well as how they are relative to all the other teams. If you want to see the winners of the first round, the first 32 teams that won, here they are. You can see the winners of the Elite Eight, meaning the top 4 teams. The championship game would have been Gonzaga and Arizona if rebounding really was the determinant, with Arizona as the champion. Go back to the previous page. Instead, this is how things actually turned out. Winners of the 316, the top 8, here they were. Like we talked about in class, interestingly enough, it really wasn't that far out. Where if you noticed, the final 4 for the hypothetical round was 3 number 2 seeds and a number 11 seed. The actual was 3 number 1 and number 7. So I mean, obviously different, but not that different. So it's kind of cool. As you may know, oops, sorry, I didn't want to do that. As you may know, the winner of the championship game in the actual scenario was Duke. Okay, so I then made a button where you could see, where you could search by either team name, region, conference, seed, and be able to see how the output did in both the actual scenario as well as the hypothetical scenario. In other words, being able to see the variance between the two. So, for example, if we search for Arizona, we can then see that in the actual bracket, they won in the round of 16, meaning they were in the final 8. But in the hypothetical bracket, where actual bracket equals n for no, they won in the round of 2, meaning they were the champion. So right here you can easily see the difference between the two. Let's say, though, we want to search by conference. We can look up the Southeastern Conference and see an interesting scenario here that I had to definitely consider. And that was that when I was making the game team table that combined the game and team tables, it naturally didn't show teams that actually won a game in either scenario. So to include those teams in my results, I had to do a left join from the team table to show teams like Louisiana State, Georgia, and Ole Miss that never won a game in both the actual and hypothetical brackets. And I was able to display this type of information by doing an if null. So if the value of furthest round with a win was null, as it was for these teams, it would then say lost in first round. So that was a very convenient SQL trick. You can see down here that Kentucky won a game in both the actual and hypothetical brackets, but Arkansas here, they only won a game in the actual bracket. They actually didn't win in the hypothetical bracket. This thing also taught me about verifications. As it was slightly tricky being able to write the PHP such that I could search for all regions if you didn't know which region to search for. Same with conference, same with actual or hypothetical or both. And seed 2, this is interesting. If you search for seed 17, which doesn't exist, this will pop up. Also, -2. See, that automatically pops up right there. So that was pretty cool to implement into my PHP. So let's go to the previous page and look at one of the other hardest parts of the project. So at first, this element seems fairly straightforward. It's just being able to search for your favorite team in the tournament and see more information about that team. So for example, if we want to search for Wisconsin in the West region in the Big Ten, 1 seed. There you go. That was a very specific search criteria, so I came up with 1 round. But what I can do now is I can save that search criteria. So I can hit Save Search. Let's put Go Badgers. save my search, and there you go. I have that right there. So then, let's go into the code. As you know, I was in your office several times trying to figure this out, but this is where I really learned a lot, was working with this team info page. I followed the Web3 format, but there was a lot of differences between what I wanted to do versus what Web3 did. Primarily being able to have the extra step of being able to add a description and be able to save that description. I know you've already seen this, but for the sake of the overview, I want to just walk you through this page. So up at the top here, I have my CSS style sheets. And then here's the beginning of the form. Lots of option values for the different data verifications. Of course, I can hit this button here to go to the query results page, where I then state these different values with their hidden names. This is like Web3, but here's the difference, where I then have an additional button where I can then save this search, which then takes me down to this section right here, where I can then add in a description and then save that description along with the criteria, which you don't see in the web page because it's hidden. And that takes me to that final page that we were at before, where it displays all of the searches that have been inserted previously, as well as, of course, inserting the previously made search. I then added a delete feature that you could delete any saved search. So let's go and do that. So let's say I wanted to delete this Gonzaga search, which is unfortunate because Gonzaga is my favorite team, but let's do it. So I delete Gonzaga, and boom, the search has been deleted. I can then go back here and go to view all saved searches and make sure it's been deleted. View all saved searches, and there you go. It's been deleted. As you can see, this works even if I don't know the specific criteria. Let's say I wanted to search for Oklahoma, but then I find out that, oh my goodness, there's 2 Oklahoma teams because there's an Oklahoma State. So that also works, and I could save multiple lines and save that as the Oklahomas, and boom. So I did that for both the Oklahoma and the Iowa teams. Let's just delete Iowa just because we can. Okay. So there you go. So that's definitely the bulk of my project. I learned a ton in this project. I want you to know that I've never actually, other than the little bit of HTML we did during the junior core, I think this was my first experience with real HTML, with real web page construction. So probably the first thing I learned was really just how to format HTML, how to write HTML, even how to make CSS style sheets. I know that may seem very elementary to you, but I learned a lot with that aspect of it. I also learned interesting SQL things like if null, and really figuring out how unions work and how complicated formulas within the select statements can work. I definitely stretched myself with that, with the SQL that wrote the hypothetical, or that formulated the hypothetical bracket. That was seriously probably the longest SQL query I've ever seen or written, much less written. But I think the thing that I learned the most was definitely about PHP and how to create different statement, or how to navigate to different web pages all within the same PHP file. During Web3, I was really just drinking from a fire hose, trying to keep myself alive. I like to say that I understood, but I think I was more just following along. Whereas after doing this project, I think I can really say that I'm confident in PHP and being able to construct a construct a web page using HTML and PHP and SQL. It makes a lot more sense to me how I can navigate to different web pages in the same PHP file, and how to push data through all the different phases. And I think overall I learned that something that seems very easy at first is actually very, very difficult and very time consuming. I probably spent around 20 to 25 hours maybe on this project. Maybe I think probably more than that, more like 30. And it seems like every day for multiple hours the last week or so, but because of that I've learned a lot, and it's been really great. Thank you so much, Professor Summers, for the semester, for the class. I learned a lot. This is definitely one of my favorite classes, and I hope you have a great summer, and I will hopefully see you again. All right, bye.